So I've picked all of the glass that I'm going to use in my new Tree of Life sample. And you can see that none of the pieces really look like they're in a leaf shape. I'm going to have to cut all of them. But it was cool as I was picking out things, what pieces of glass reminded me of each person. So this one reminds me of my grandpa. And it's kind of like this, I don't know, like a dirty, sagey, green, kind of milky gray color, and it just reminds me of him being a dreamer. So not that it is a depressing, but it just is kind of like floating on a cloud kind of feeling, and it just popped right out at me. And my version of the same thing is this one here, so same kind of like dreamy, cloudy feel, but in a happy, optimistic, you can see through it. His wife, so my step grandma, this purple glass kind of spoke to me, and it was interesting, and you can still see some of the residue. It had some of the silver marker on it from the last person that was cutting the glass, and it was a bitch to get off. It was so stubborn, and that is exactly her. So that one's absolutely perfect. Ironically, another grandma is going to be in the purple tone, so this is my Nana, and it's got kind of the light and the dark, and that represents her perfectly. I think everybody kind of sees the light, airy-fairy side, and I get to see the other side of her too. Not that it's bad, it's just, it is what it is. This one reminds me of my dad. It's a little bit kind of industrial looking, a little bit rugged, and as I was thinking about his leaf, I'm actually going to try to incorporate some nuts and bolts into it, maybe some washers and screws, something like that. So we'll see if I can pull that off. My sister, this pink one really stood out to me. So it's a little bit more expensive glass. This isn't your typical run-of-the-mill, and it's hand rolled. You can see the different variations. When it's modeled like that and has different variations, it's not something that is done by machine. I really like this glass, and it totally reminds me of her. And then my mom, I was going to do a sage green, but I actually found this one. It's a little bit more of an olive tone, and it's just kind of simple and still a little bit transparent, very kind of honest and upfront, but still a little bit dreamy, kind of like her dad. So this works out perfect for my mom. And then the rest of the glass that I have is just a little bit of a representation of stuff that I've done in my life. So there's some mirror for times where I'm reflective. There's some clear glass when it's kind of like what you see is what you get. There's a little bit of iridescence when I'm kind of shimmering. And then it moves into some of the green tones. And those are my favorite. When I was picking out the glass, they kind of speak to me. And like this one here on the back side, it's kind of like, ooh, barfy. But then when you flip it over, or even in the light, it just has a little bit different effect. And I thought that's perfect for sometimes in my life when what I thought it was going to be didn't turn out exactly how it did, and it actually worked out for the benefit in the long run. So I'm excited to get going on these pieces, and we'll see how it all transforms. So I'm just cutting out all of my templates for leaves, and I'm a wing it girl. I don't go online and print off all these patterns and look up or purchase patterns for stained glass. I just kind of do it off the top of my head. It feels better to me when I'm making the piece, and it's 100% handmade, like I'm not copying someone else's pattern, and that's really important to me. If you are somebody that you need to use a pattern, don't be ashamed, just go and pick the pattern that you want. There's lots of them online. If you just Google free stained glass patterns, it'll pop right up, and you can print and use whatever. I'm sure there's some on Etsy too that you could buy, but if you want to try this method, it works out really well for me. So I just took some scrap paper, I cut it in half, and I folded it so that I can make this little leaf shape. Now the problem is this is one of my skinny pieces, and my pattern is going to be too big for this. So what I do, and because my paper is really flimsy, I will actually transfer it. I've got a piece of scrap cardboard that came into one of my stencil backings. So I'm going to transfer it onto my cardboard, just draw all the way around here and then cut it out so that my piece of pattern is a little bit heftier, and it's going to stand up for how many of these leaves I've got to cut out. And then once I've cut out the bigger shape, I'm going to take this and actually cut just a smaller version of the exact same thing so that it will fit on my mirror piece, and then that smaller piece I'll transfer onto there as well, so it becomes easy peasy, and then I can use these pieces down the road. So I've gone ahead and traced all of these leaves onto my cardboard sheet, and it's not very thick. It's just like a flimsy piece, a cereal box, or like the outside of the pizza box, like the bake at home ones are perfect. They're good enough for, you can cut and trim your pieces and be as precise and perfectionist as you want, but it's not so thick that it's going to be a beast to cut, and then when you're done with them you can just recycle them. So that's what I like about these guys. By the time I cut all of the glass that I showed in the last video, these little pieces of paper wouldn't be holding their shape between them getting banged around and then the marker kind of eating all of the edges. It just wouldn't hold up long term. That's why I use the cardboard. So just like I said before, I'm going to fold this in half and trim off that extra little bit. So I did already. And then now this one will fit perfectly onto this piece of glass and any of the really thin ones that I have. So this is going to be perfect. I'll trace that out on there as well, and maybe even do one of the smaller guys here so that I've got some different shapes for my leaves. And then I've got all my pattern pieces. So as I go through all of my glass, I will pick the flattest side, line up the pattern piece on here and trace it with a Sharpie, and then I cut it all out. That's it. So I've got my pieces out of my cardboard all cut out, and they're not 100% perfect, and I don't really care because by the time I get all of the pieces transferred onto the glass and then cut all of the glass out, the glass isn't going to be perfect either, and I'm going to need to take a grinder to it. So it's enough that I can get the basic shape that I want. I'll go through and just trace around with my Sharpie and get my basic shape on here. Right, so you can see that there's a little bit that goes off the edge. I'm okay with that. What's going to happen is when I cut it out, it's going to need to be ground anyway, so I'll chop off these little tiny bits, and then I'll cut off this curve, and it's going to be a rough looking leaf. What I'll do is take that to the grinder and just smooth everything out, and then that'll be the example of my mom in my tree of life. So that's it. Super easy. So I like to use the pistol grip cutter when I'm cutting all of my stained glass, and you hold it just like that, the pistol grip. I use my index finger to guide the wheel, and it's not going to hurt you. It's a carbide tip, so it's just going to score the glass, but it doesn't cut skin. And it pivots, and it has a spring-loaded feature as well, so it can run over the different grooves of the glass. And mine has a little bit of a texture. It doesn't matter which side, both sides have a little bit of a texture, so I'm just going to cut it on this side here. And when I hold it, we're going to go from edge to edge, so I'm going to try and get this so you can see it. I'm going to start from this edge here. I'm going to go all the way around and then pull up at the other side. And it's a little bit of a wonky cut. So I'll start it with the running pliers. Make sure my line is up. I give it just a little bit. Let that score line break, and then that's it. There's my first cut. So you can see it's not 100% curved. I'm going to have to take that to the grinder, but that's pretty good to be taking that little bit to the grinder. Just a little tiny bit on all of these edges to grind off. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then I might even leave these right attached on there to give it a little bit different funky shape. So let's cut this one off. And the running pliers are meant to make sure that you've got equal amounts of glass on both sides, and I don't nearly have enough on this little tiny corner. So what I'm going to do is take the Groziers, and they look like this, where they've got a funky little jaw. So I'm going to push these up against the edge of that line, and with my hands I'm going to actually break them up. So this is the motion that I'm going to be making when I pull on the pliers. Okay, just like that. And I've got a little garbage bucket, and then I can go through and kind of tidy up this little bit here and smooth out these. That's it. If you've bought this stained glass supplies from me, I've made you get one of these cutters. The mats, I love it. All of the little glass shards get stuck into here, so then you take this whole grid and you dump it up into a garbage, and your work surface stays nice and clean. people that are used to cutting on towels, or if they have a cutting board or even like a mouse pad, something like that, the habit and the instinct is to take your hand and swoop and clean all of the glass off, and then your whole hand's going to be full of splinters. So I love these that you don't have to worry about it. It holds all of the little shards and you can just keep cutting, and then when you're done for the day, you just pick it up, dump it into a designated glass garbage can, and you're good to go. Super, super easy. So this was one of my pieces. This one's for my Nana, and this is the pattern piece that I picked. And when I held it up to the glass, I was going to end up cutting off and kind of wasting this huge chunk. So what I might do is kind of extend my line just a little bit past so that I'm scooping up and using as much of this glass as possible, and then continuing and just cutting off the glass and kind of finalizing that leaf shape. I'm not worried about whether or not they look perfect or if every single leaf is exactly the same. It's more important to me that I'm making a piece that feels good and is organic and kind of flows. So that's my number one priority. If you are someone that having all of these pieces kind of wonky and different is going to drive you crazy, then don't do it. Pick a piece or pick a series of pieces, pattern pieces that is, and glass that will match, and then you keep cutting until you run out of glass. The downside about doing it that way is for pieces like this isn't going to work. Like it's not going to fit. So I'd have to manipulate some of my pieces to make sure that it would fit. And even this one, you can see that it's not going to quite fit. So I'd have to go even a little bit smaller to use up this color of glass. But I love it, so I'm going to do it. That's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make, is that my pattern pieces themselves are not all the same, but that's also what makes my stuff unique and what feels good. So do whatever floats your boat, and don't worry about what other people think. So for a piece of glass like this guy, where I have to go up and around this curve, that is too sharp of a curve to cut all at once. The glass is likely to go off and jut and kind of do its own thing, or worse, it would cut into this part of the leaf, and that's what I want to keep. If you think about when you get a chip in your windshield and it goes from edge to edge, whether or not you get the chip on the edge, say it's in the middle of your windshield, it's always going to travel until it stops on the edge. And the same goes for glass. So instead of letting it kind of do whatever it wants and having a mind of its own, we're going to teach it what to do. So when I'm going to cut this, I'm going to go along this line until I reach here, and then I'm going to carry on right off to this edge, so that this chunk of glass could always be used for something else, possibly like an abstract piece. And then the same thing, once that's going to be cut off, I can start from here and go all the way around, and I can save these two pieces to maybe use in an abstract. So take a look. When I'm holding my cutter, I'm holding it right onto the edge, and I often use my opposite hand just to kind of give it a guide just to start. And I'm holding the cutter perpendicular, and you want to hear that kind of nails on a chalkboard sound. I can use my running pliers, and poof, there we go. That piece is totally salvageable, and that would be perfect in a abstract. So let's do the other side here. Oh, it hit one of the little pockets because this is a hand-rolled piece. It's got a little bit of texture, but same thing. There we go. We've got our leaf cut out. So I'm actually going to take my little Groziers and go in. I'm going to bring my little garbage bucket over here and just trim that off just a little bit so there's a little bit less to grind. You see that, how that little piece came off? Same with over here. I'm just gonna tidy this up a little bit less to grind. It's not the end of the world if you have to grind it, but if you can save every little piece, and your grinder bit will go a long way. That's it. So I've got a couple of my leaves done. I'm going to keep going, and then I'll grind them all at once. When I use my cutter, I actually don't fill the reservoir with oil. With all of my traveling and the fact that not always these are kind of being stored upright, sometimes the oil falls right out through the cutter, and it makes a hell of a mess. Like even just touching it, there's a little bit of oil on my hands. So I like to put a little bit of oil in with a sponge, and this is just one of the little tea light holders. I got this from IKEA like 100 years ago. And I just roll it around on there. It gets nice and lubricated, and then I can cut like crazy. So that's what the little sponge in the container is. For all three of these pieces, you can see that if I was to go and cut based on the fact that I'm going to have to go off of the edge, there could be potential wasted glass here. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm actually going to run a really tight line almost right up until the marker line. So this huge chunk of glass on each one of these pieces can be saved. And for those of you might be like, oh, well, I don't care, it's only a hunk of glass, like whatever, what's the big deal? That could be a whole other leaf. So by saving it, I could actually get 2 leaves out of this piece and almost 2 leaves out of all of these pieces if I wanted to. And it might be the difference of if you are building like a lamp, or if you're building a leaf and you need to have the exact same piece somewhere else, you might need to use this glass. So using it wisely and just being conservative in how you use it, just by zipping a quick little line here, can help save in the long run. And you never know when those little scraps come in handy. So just like that, and I'm gonna pull this and my hands are gonna go up and over, just like that. Easy peasy. So I'm going to do that for all of these guys and cut these little pieces out. Same thing, go along the edge, it'll run off, kind of curve around this side, and then come curve around this side. So I've got my main pieces cut out, and they are as close as I can get it with the cutter and the tools without taking it to a grinder. I'm pretty excited that I don't have like massive chunks to cut off. It's just simple shaping, like this guy around here just needs to be shaped just a little bit. My sister's leaf, same thing, just a tad to kind of smooth it out. But everything looks good so far. So I'm going to do this exact same thing to the rest of my glass over here. And whatever shapes it looks like, I'm just going to go with the flow. So I might use more of some than others, depending on how they cut. I think this one's probably going to be the worst to cut out because of all of the funky ridges and how thick it is in some places. So we'll see how many I get out of that. And then some of them are quite a bit smaller, so you might only get a leaf out of that. I'm okay with it either way, so stay tuned for the rest of it.